Hello, welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Misery, Chapter 2. Annie laid down the 3 pages of typescript on the night table beside Emily, waited to see what she would say about them. She was curious but not really nervous. He had been surprised really at how easy it had been to slip back into Misery's world. Her world was corny and melodramatic, but not change the fact that returning there had been nowhere near as distasteful as he expected. It had been, in fact, rather comforting, like putting on a pair of old slippers. So his mouth dropped open. He was frankly, honestly flabbergasted when she said, "It's not right." You don't like it? He could hardly believe it. How else could she have liked the other Misery novels and like this? It was so Misery-esque, it was nearly a caricature. Well, with the motherly old Ramage Gyps snuffed in the pantry, Ian and Misery pawing at each other like a couple of horny kids just home from a Friday night high school dance-in. Now she was the one who looked bewildered. Like it? Of course I like it. It's beautiful. When Ian swept her in his arms, I cried. I couldn't help it. Her eyes were actually a bit red. And you naming the baby Thompson's nurse after me, that was very sweet. He thought smart, too. At least I hope so. And by the way, Toots, the baby's name started out to be Sean, in case you're interested. I changed it because it was just too fucking many ends to fill in. I'm afraid I don't understand. No, you don't. I didn't say anything about not liking it. I said it wasn't right. It's a cheat. You have to change it. Had you once thought of her as the perfect audience? Oh boy. Had to give you credit, Paul. Where you make a mistake, you go whole hog. Constant reader had just become mercilessly editor. Without his even aware it was happening, Paul's face rearranged itself in the expression of sincere concentration he had always wore to listening editors. He thought of this "can I help you lady" expression. That was because most editors were like women who drive into service stations and tell the mechanic to fix whatever it is that's making that knocking sound on the hood, or go wonk wonk inside the dashboard. And please have it done an hour ago. A look of sincere concentration was good because sincere flattery and editors were flattered. They've sometimes given some of their mad ideas. How was it a cheat? He asked. Well, Jeffrey rode for the doctor, she said. That's right, that happened in chapter 38 of Misery's Child. The doctor never came, as well you know, because Jeffrey's horse tripped on the rail of the rotten Mr. Cranthorpe's toll gate when Jeffrey tried to jump it. I hope that dirty bird gets his comeuppance in Misery's return, Paul, I really do. And Jeffrey broke his shoulder and some of his ribs and lay there most of the night in the rain till the sheep herders' boys came along and found him. So the doctors never came, you see? Yes, he found himself suddenly unable to take his eyes through the face. He had thought she was putting out an editor's hat, maybe trying on a collaborator's chapeau, preparing to tell him what to write and how to write it. That was not so. Mr. Cranthorpe, for instance. She had hoped Mr. Cranthorpe would get his comeuppance, but she did not demand it. She saw the story's creative course as something outside of her hands, in spite of her obvious control of him. Something simply could not be done. Creativity, or the lack of it, had no bearing on these things. To do was a foolish thing, as issuing a proclamation revoking the law of gravity or trying to play tennis with a brick. She really was a constant reader, but constant reader did not mean constant sap. She would not allow him to kill Misery, but neither would she allow him to cheat Misery back to life. But Christ, did I kill her? He thought wearily. What am I going to do? When I was a girl, she said, they used to have chapter plays at the movies. An episode a week. The Mouse Avenger and Flash Gordon. Even one about Frank Buck, the one who went to Africa to catch wild animals who could subdue the lions and tigers just by staring at them. Do you remember the chapter plays? I remember them, but you can't be that old, Annie. You must have seen them on TV, or had an older brother or sister who told you about them. At the corners of her mouth dimples a breed briefly in the solid area of flesh and then disappeared. Go on with you, you fooler. I did have an older brother, though. We used to go to the movies every Saturday after noon. This was the Bakersfield, California, where I grew up. Well, I always used to enjoy the newsreel and the color cartoons and the feature. What I looked forward to was the next installment of the chapter play. I was telling myself, thinking about the odd moments all week long. If a class was boring, or I had to babysit Mrs. Kremitz, four brats downstairs, I used to hate those little brats. Andy lapsed into moody silence, staring at the corner. Okay. As she came out of it, as always with an expression of faint surprise, though she had not respected the world to be here. Rocket Man was my favorite. There he would be at the end of Chapter 6, Death in the Sky, unconscious while his plane went into power dive. Or at the end of Chapter 9, Fury Doom, he'd be tied to a chair in a burning warehouse. Sometimes it was a car with no brakes, sometimes poisonous gas, sometimes electricity. Anna spoke these things with affection, which was bizarre in its unmistakable genuineness. Cliffhangers, they called them, he ventured. She frowned at him. I know that, Mr. Smart Guy. Gosh, sometimes I must think you must really believe I'm awful stupid. I don't, Annie, really. She waved a hand at him impatiently, and he understood it would be better, today at least, not to interrupt her. It was fun to try and think how to get out of it. Sometimes I could, sometimes I couldn't. I didn't really care, as long as they played fair. The people made the story. She looked at him sharply to make sure he was taking the point. Paul thought he could hardly have missed it. Like when he was unconscious in the airplane. He woke up and there was a parachute under his seat. He put it on and jumped out of the plane, and that was fair enough. Thousands of English comp teachers would disagree with you, my dear, Paul thought. When you're talking about, it's called a Deus Ex Machina, the God of the Machine, first years in Greek amphitheaters. When the playwright got his hero into an impossible jam, the chair decked with flowers and came down from overhead. The hero sat down on it and was drawn up out of harm's way. Even the stupidest swain could grasp the symbolism. The hero had been saved by God, but the Deus Ex Machina, sometimes known in the technical jargon as the parachute under the plane trick, finally went out of vogue around the year 1700. Except, of course, for such arcana of the Rocket Man serials and the Nancy Drew books. Guess you missed the news, Annie. For one gruesome, never-to-be-forgotten moment, Paul thought he was going to have a laughing fit. Given her mood this morning, that entirely would have been resulted in some unpleasant and painful punishment. He raised a hand quickly to his mouth, passing it over the smile, trying to be warned there, and manufacturing a coughing fit. She thumped him on the back hard enough to hurt. Better? Yes, thanks. Can I go now, Paul, or were you planning to have a sneezing fit? Should I get the bucket? Do you feel as though you might have to go vomit a few times? No, Annie, go on. What you're saying is fascinating. She looked a little mollified. Not much, but a little. When he found the parachute under the seat, it was fair. Maybe not all that realistic, but fair. He thought about this, startled. Her occasional sharp insights never failed to startle him, and decided it was true. Fair and realistic might be the synonyms in the best of all possible worlds, but this was not the real world. But you take another episode, she said, and that's exactly what's wrong with what you wrote us today, Paul, so listen to me. I'm all ears. She looked at him sharply to see if he was joking. His face, however, was pale and serious, very much the face of a conscientious student. The urge to laugh had dissipated when he realized Annie might know everything about Deus Ex Machina except the name. Alright, she said, this is a no-breaks chapter. The bad guys put Rocket Man, only if it was Rocket Man and his secret identity, into the car that didn't have any brakes. And then they welded all the doors shut, and then they started the car rolling down the twisty, turning mountain road. I was on the edge of I see that day, I tell you. She was sitting on the edge of the seat. Paul was sitting across the room in the wheelchair. It had been 5 days since his expedition into the bathroom in the parlor, and he had recuperated from the experience faster than he could have believed. Just not being caught, it seemed. It was a marvel restorative. She looked vaguely at the calendar where the smiling boy rode his sled through the endless February. So there was a poor old Rocket Man stuck in that car without the rocket pack or even his special helmet, with one-way eyes, trying to steer the car and open the side door all the time. He was busier than the one-armed paper hanger, I tell you. Yes, Paul could suddenly see it, and in an instinctive way, he understood exactly how such a scene, absurdly melodramatic as it could be milked for suspense. The scenery, all but canted at an alarming downhill angle, rushed by. Cut to the brake pedal, which sinks bonelessly to the mat when the man's foot. He saw the foot clearly, clad in a 1940-style air-tip shoe, stomps on it. Cut to his shoulder, hitting the door. Cut to the outside reverse, showing us an irregular bed bead of solder where the door had been sealed shut. Stupid, sure, but not a bit literary. We could do things with it. You could speed up pulses with it. No Shiva Regal here. This was fictional equivalent, a backwoods popsicle. So when you saw the road just ended off the cliff, she said, everyone in the theater knew that if Rocket Man didn't get out of that old Hudson before it got a cliff, he was a gone goose. Oh boy, and here came the car, with Rocket Man still trying to put on the brakes or bash the door open, and then over it went. It flew out in the airspace, and then it went down. It went down side of the cliff about halfway down and burst into flames. Then went to the ocean, and then this ending message came up to the screen that said, next week, chapter 11, The Dragon Flies. She sat on the edge of his bed, hands tightly together, her large bosom rising and falling rapidly. Well, she said, not looking at him, only at the wall. After that, I hardly saw the movie. I just didn't think about Rocket Man once in a while the next week. I thought about him all the time. How could he have gotten out of it? I couldn't even guess. Next Saturday, I was standing in front of the theater at noon. Although the box office didn't open until 1:15 and the movie didn't start till 2. But Paul, what happened? Guess what? You'll never guess. Paul said nothing, but he could guess. He understood how she could have written and still not know it was right. No, and it was not with editors sometimes unworthy, trustworthy literary sophistication, with constant readers, flat and uncontractable certainty. He understood, and what was amazing to find out he was ashamed of himself. She was right. He had written a cheat. The new episode started off with the ending of the last one. They showed him going out the hill, they showed him the cliff, they showed him banging on the car door trying to open, and then just before the car got to the edge, the door banged out and opened, and he flew to the road. The car went over the cliff, and all the kids in the theater were cheering because Rocket Man got out. But I wasn't cheering, Paul. I was mad. I started yelling, that isn't what happened last week. That isn't what happened last week. And he jumped up and began to walk rapidly back and forth in the room, her head down, her hair falling into a frizzy cowl around her face, smacking one fist steadily and the other palm blazing. My brother tried to make me stop when I wouldn't. He tried to put his hand on my mouth and show me out, and I bit him, and he went on yelling, this isn't what happened last week. Are you all too stupid to remember? Did you all get amnesia? And my brother said, you're crazy, Annie. But I knew I wasn't. And the manager came and said if I didn't shut up, I'd have to leave. And I said, You bet I'm gonna leave because that was a dirty treat. That wasn't what happened last week. She looked at him, and Paul saw clear murder in her eyes. He didn't get out of the cock-a-doodle car. It went over the edge, and he was still inside. Do you understand that? Yes, Paul said. Do you understand that? She suddenly leaped him with limber ferocity, although he felt certain she meant to hurt him, as she has before, because she couldn't get that dirty birdie of a typewriter who had cheated Rocky Man out of the Hudson before it went over the cliff. He did not move at all. He could see the seeds of her current instability at the window of the past as she jumped open for him. But he was so awed by it. The injustice she felt it was, in spite of his childishness, completely and arguably real. She didn't hit him. She seized the front of the robe she was wearing and dragged him forward until their faces were nearly touching. Do you? Yes, Annie, yes. She stared at him. The fierce black gaze must have seen truth on his face, because after a moment she slung him contemptuously back in the chair. He grimaced against the thick grinding pain, and after a while began to subside. Then you know what's wrong, she said. I suppose I do, although I'll be goddamned if I know how to fix it. And then the other voice returned at once. I don't know if you'll be damned by God or saved by him, Polly. But one thing I do know. If you don't find a way to bring Misery back to life, a way she can believe, she's going to kill you. Then do it, she said curtly and left the room. That's the end of that chapter. See you later.